Browse the available projects posted on the website at www.sfpirg.ca/arcs or come into the SF Perg office located in the Rotunda for information on how to get started on an arts project. This semester, put academic resources to use for social justice and community action. SF Perg, for a just, sustainable, and meaningful world.
Hurry up, you have only 5 minutes to get to class.
Hang on a sec. I just need to add my sources to my paper before I hand it in.
Are you kidding? That's going to take forever. I can't believe it, you haven't done that yet.
Calm down, it's not a problem. I used RefWorks.
What's RefWorks?
It's an online bibliography and citation manager available through SFU Library. It stores my references online, allows me to pick the citation style I want, APA for this class, right? And generates citations and bibliographies automatically. See? Done.
Wow, I didn't know you could do that. That is going to make paper writing so much easier.
Come on, let's send our papers in.
SFU Library. Ask, explore, discover. www.lib.sfu.ca.
You're listening to CJSF 90.1 FM, broadcasting from Burnaby Mountain, British Columbia.
Good afternoon, everyone, and hope you're having a good one today wherever you're listening from. We're broadcasting from Burnaby, British Columbia on CJSF 90.1 FM, 89.3 cable FM. We're also online at www.cjsf.ca as well as TELUS HD channel 3706. You're listening to Smitten by the Written with KP Wee. Today we'll play an interview we conducted with Canadian songwriter James Hill from last week. He talks about some of the lyrics from his songs and his knack for using puns and play on words. He also shares a couple of interesting stories about a tour he had in Japan fairly recently. And in the last part of the show, we'll listen to a couple of his songs from his album Man with a Love Song, which was released last fall. James has roots here in Langley, BC, and is known as a ukulele master, so we're very excited to feature him on our program today. Good afternoon, everyone, and you're listening to Smitten by the Written on CJSF 90.1 FM in Burnaby, British Columbia, 89.3 cable FM, and online at www.cjsf.ca as well as TELUS HD channel 3706. My name is KP Wee, and I'll be with you today, and it's my pleasure to have Canadian songwriter and ukulele master James Hill on the program with us this afternoon. He's been touring the Toronto area this week, and we're very pleased to have him come onto our program. So good evening, James, and you're on tour this week in the Toronto area. I know you're very busy, so thank you so much for joining us today on Smitten by the Written on CJSF 90.1 FM, and welcome to our program.
Thanks very much. How are you doing?
Pretty good. It's pretty cold this week up in British Columbia as it's just started to snow, but other than that, things are great. So let's get started. So James, you're known as the ukulele master, and I understand that you first learned the ukulele back in Langley, British Columbia, back in grade 4. So what do you remember about getting hooked on it back then? Like what kind of ukulele was it and all of that stuff?
Well, it was a $40 special. I remember that. That was my first uke, and I wish I knew what happened to that instrument. I lost it somewhere along the line, but I do remember it well. And it wasn't the thing about Langley and the program there. Mm-hmm. The ukulele program is it's not unusual for students at that age to start playing the ukulele. So everybody played, and it wasn't something that was strange or even that novel. It was just kind of like another subject, which looking back on is actually kind of strange in itself. That ukulele wasn't strange, but I just remember it being. I remember it being lots of fun. I remember the feeling of making friends through music and getting closer to my friends through music, and I think that's what's kept me with it for so long.
Good stuff. Hopefully you'll find that ukulele one day. Hopefully it doesn't end up on eBay or something. Yeah. Can you quickly tell our listeners just a difference between the ukulele and the regular guitar? Some of our listeners might not know the difference.
Yeah. Well, basically, it looks like a small guitar, and it's got 4 strings instead of 6.
Right.
But you play it in fairly similar ways, and it's essentially like the guitar's sort of smaller cousin. Mm-hmm. It has, like the guitar, it has a European ancestry. The ukulele, or as they say in Hawaii, the ukulele.
Oh, great.
Comes from Portugal originally, or at least the prototype came from Portugal, and then ended up in Hawaii, via the sailing ships and the sugarcane workers who were coming to Hawaii, and there, sort of when it got to Hawaii, over the years, it became this new instrument. So, like the guitar, it has this European ancestry. Only with the ukulele, we see it come through Polynesia, it's a very interesting sort of diversion in its history, how it got to Polynesia and how it became sort of embraced by the Polynesian people and such a big part of their culture.
Good stuff. Speaking of comparisons, I just want to mention this. I read this somewhere, but someone once called you the Wayne Gretzky of the ukulele. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I have no trouble with that. I think it's a great compliment. I'm not sure exactly what to make of that. I think if I remember right, that was Stuart McLean.
Yes, it was.
And that was, I remember hearing him say that. It was very early on. It was about 2002, and I was at university, and my first album had just come out. Mm-hmm. It was an album that I'd recorded in my dorm room at UBC.
Oh, wow.
And I remember that album coming out, and my professors would come into school sometimes and say, "Oh, hey, I heard you on CBC radio." It was a very strange time where I was starting to move into a professional career, and at the same time I was still at school. And I remember hearing that comment when they broadcast the Vinyl Cafe show that I was on, and that comment has really stuck with me in a good way. And it's helped. Has definitely helped me along the road, which I think is what Stuart's idea was. He's very supportive of young up and coming musicians, and certainly with that one sentence, he did me a big favor.
Good stuff. We're with James Hill this evening, and just wanted to actually ask you as well, James. You then went on to become like a co-author of the book Ukulele in the Classroom. Now, how did that opportunity come about? Did someone approach you? Did you approach them? How did you get this opportunity?
Well, you have to go back to what we started talking about, which was my introduction to the ukulele in grade 4,
right?
And that program had been pioneered out east in Halifax, by a man named Chalmers Doan. And Chalmers, had such success in the Halifax schools with the ukulele that many school districts around Canada started to implement their own programs based on his curriculum. And so, even though I grew up out west, I grew up learning through the Doan method, and that was adopted out in Langley, and the main, the driving force of the curriculum out in Langley was still the Doan method. So I grew up hearing this name Doan all the time. And so when I got to my early 20s and started to take a real interest in teaching and in pedagogy, it was Chalmers Doan who I sought out, to really help me take my own teaching skills to the next level, and to collaborate on this new project, which would kind of update and revise and inject new life into the existing ukulele curriculum. So I traveled out east and met with Chalmers, and over the course of many years, we fleshed out this new resource for teachers, which is now being used all over the world.
That's excellent stuff. So we're with songwriter James Hill on Smitten by the Written on CJSF 90.1 FM. Now, turning to your songs and lyrics. Now, James, what's your approach to songwriting? Like, what do you start with? Like, do you start with lyrics or melody? And how do you develop an idea? I mean, because you released an album, Man with a Love Song, back in September, and there are like 14 songs in total. So a lot of work was put into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of surprised myself in a way. I always thought that I would be more of a music first person, because music really was my first love, I guess.
Okay.
And so I expected that I would start with melody. I expected that I would start with maybe chord progressions or something. But as it turns out, I'm very much a lyrics first person. And once I feel that, once the lyric is strong, I find that the melody and the chords kind of take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
A sentence has a natural rhythm, and words have a natural flow and a natural up and down cadence and contour. So if you got the poetry sort of solid, all you had to do is sort of amplify the natural rhythm and the natural intonation of the line, and you sort of get a melody for free, as long as the poetry is really airtight. And I find that's basically, if there was a sort of a generalization that I could make, that's more or less how it usually goes.
Now, it's interesting you mentioned poetry a couple times there, because I got to say this, James, that your album, Man with a Love Song, has quite a few songs in there with interesting lyrics. It's kind of like poetry, especially with the song Soap and Water, and What Would You Have Me Do? Right? And I know this is also like, there's some kind of, I guess, types of wordplay, if you will, like with the lyrics from the song High Demand, with phrases like, this doll is burned a hole now love, so little things like that. So tell us a little bit about the types of wordplay, poetry, like, if you will, throughout this album.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. My dad actually is he's from New Zealand. Both my parents are from New Zealand.
Okay.
I'm first generation Canadian, and the New Zealanders, the Kiwis, have a real strong sense of wordplay and punning, which I think goes back more to an English sort of sense of wordplay. And so growing up, my dad was always, punning, always plays on words and everything. And at the time, I found it a little bit annoying and frustrating, but I think, the good parts of that sense of humor and sense of word play, and really the word play, I mean, the idea of just having fun with language, I think that really rubbed off on me through my dad's influence. And now when I write and when I listen to music, I enjoy that. I enjoy the sense of fun and the sense of play, a little bit of irreverence and just sort of and humor that comes with sort of taking two images and sort of mashing them together, which is often what happens in those kind of lines. And so that I think that's where my interest in wordplay comes from, and it's certainly something that I have a lot of fun with.
Good stuff. Now, like I said earlier, you obviously put a lot of work into the album Man with a Love Song, because there are 14 songs in there. Now, I would imagine that as a songwriter, you never stop writing. Anything new coming out on the horizon? Like, will we see like another album with the same number of songs, or would you have like fewer songs on the next one?
Yeah, I've always wanted to do a really long album. Mm-hmm. So this I feel, Man with a Love Song was kind of, I just wanted to do that. I wanted it to be a long player, I wanted to be able to, somebody to be able to put it in the car and, drive for a long way before they hear that first song again. And,
right.
And so the 14 songs is a little unusual, I think, these days, especially. It seems albums are getting shorter and shorter, and I think the next one will be shorter. But that being said, I'm, like you say, you never stop writing, and I have been writing a lot lately. So
okay, that's good.
I think there'll be another album on the horizon, not too distant future, but I don't think it'll be quite as long and sort of symphonic as this one is.
Okay. Well, we'll be looking forward to that. That's for sure. We're speaking with songwriter James Hill here on CJSF 90.1 FM. And James, you just had a performance on the 16th in Toronto, and you've done a number of performances and a few tours, even overseas in Japan, Thailand, the UK within the last year or so. So any interesting anecdotes about any of those tours that you can share with us?
Well, yeah, there's always interesting things going on. I mean, some of our most outrageous and memorable experiences have happened in Asia.
Okay.
Where of course it's the customs and the unwritten language is just so different, and the expectations, and we've had some fairly strange experiences and some really wonderful experiences over there. I mean, I remember one time going to Japan on my last trip, I think, to Japan, where we were where I was as a vegetarian in a restaurant where they served beef, and the town was particularly fond of its beef, and they were very proud of its beef.
Right.
And so they passed the beef dish around, and as a vegetarian, I just naturally said, well, no, thank you, and passed it around, passed it to the next person, and without knowing, that was profoundly offensive, and that everybody at that moment had been watching to see what I would do and how I would like the beef, and then to just simply pass on it. These kinds of things that even with somebody helping you through and sort of guiding you through, it's hard to navigate those kind of things. So it makes me think of the time that we were in Japan during the swine flu. Now, this is going back a couple of years, but
right.
You remember all that swine flu business, and I said to Anne, this was her first time, I said, we're in a really fairly conservative traditional town here.
Okay.
And I said, don't be surprised if the people aren't quite as responsive as you're accustomed to. They enjoy it, but they don't show it maybe in the same way as a Western audience. So yeah, she was prepared for that. but then we walk out on stage, and nothing could prepare us for what we saw. And because of the swine flu, everybody was really concerned, and there were 300 people in the room, sold-out room, and every single one of them was wearing a surgical mask on their face. And it was like a scene out of some kind of like Stanley Kubrick movie. It was just a very strange, a very surreal moment. And I don't know how we got through the concert. Actually, I do know. There was one young boy in the front row who was the only one not wearing a mask.
Okay.
He was smiling and dancing, and essentially there were 300 people in the room, but we really just played the concert with that one boy. So there's always an adventure or two, on the road.
That sounds really fascinating. So James, please tell us how we can find out about your latest happenings and future tour dates.
Well, yeah, the best way is the website, jameshillmusic.com. That's really got everything you need to know, calendar and blog and everything like that.
Perfect. So jameshillmusic.com.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So that's great stuff, James. That's actually all the time we have on today's program. So thank you so much for being with us today, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
You're welcome. Thanks so much, KP.
No problem. So that was James Hill, songwriter and ukulele master, sharing some stories with us, and we'll take a short break, and we'll be back with you in a moment. Welcome back to Smitten by the Written with KPW here on CJSF 90.1 FM, 89.3 Cable FM. We're going to listen to a few more songs from James Hill's album, Man with a Love Song. Here's track number 7, Soap and Water, and then we'll have track number 8, What Would You Have Me Do? And as I mentioned earlier, these two definitely feel very much like poems. Well, you be the judge of that. Here's Soap and Water by James Hill on CJSF 90.1 FM.